The call came while I stood barefoot in my parents' living room, watching my sister Brooke laugh in the kitchen like nothing was wrong. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. A man's voice came through, polite but firm. He explained he'd just purchased a sapphire and diamond necklace for $5,000. Now he needed proof of ownership. My stomach dropped as he described it perfectly. The intricate silver setting, the 3 sapphires arranged in a triangle, the tiny diamonds surrounding each stone. There was only one problem. That necklace was mine. And the person who sold it to him was standing 10 feet away, borrowing my mother's mixing bowl to make her famous brownies. She was smiling, completely at ease, like this was just another ordinary Saturday afternoon. "Can you describe it again?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart pounding in my chest. He listed every detail with painful accuracy. The small engraving on the clasp that read, "To Amelia, with love." The slight imperfection in the largest sapphire that made it unique. A tiny inclusion visible only under light. The way the chain had a twisted pattern instead of regular links. Each spiral carefully crafted by hand. Each word he spoke felt like a punch to my chest, stealing my breath. This wasn't a similar necklace. This wasn't a coincidence or a case of mistaken identity. This was my grandmother's necklace, the one she'd given me on my 16th birthday with trembling hands and tears in her eyes. The one I'd kept in my jewelry box in my childhood bedroom, carefully wrapped in the original silk pouch. The one that should have been safely tucked away upstairs in my dresser drawer. "Where did you buy this?" I asked, walking toward the window so Brooke wouldn't hear my conversation or see my expression. The man explained he'd met someone through a resale app popular for luxury items. They'd agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown 3 days ago on Wednesday afternoon. The seller was a young woman with blonde hair, mid-20s, very friendly and professional. She'd told him it was a family piece she no longer wanted, that it didn't match her style anymore. She'd seemed trustworthy and knowledgeable, he said, which was why he'd paid cash without asking too many questions or requesting documentation. But now his girlfriend wanted proper documentation for insurance purposes before she'd wear it. I turned slowly to look at my sister through the doorway. She was still laughing at something on her phone, still acting like her day was perfectly normal and carefree. She had no idea a stranger was describing her exact appearance to me over the phone. The truth hit me with brutal, crushing clarity that made my knees weak. My sister had stolen my jewelry. She'd taken something that meant everything to me, something irreplaceable, and sold it for cash like it was nothing more than a used textbook or old furniture. And she'd done it while I was living under the same roof, trusting her, believing family meant something sacred and unbreakable. The man on the phone was still talking, asking if I could help him verify the piece and confirm its authenticity. I realized in that moment this was my opening. This was the crack in Brooke's perfect plan, the one detail she hadn't anticipated. She'd never expected the buyer to ask questions or demand proof. She'd never thought anyone would trace it back to her or connect the dots. The realization settled over me like cold water, sharp and clarifying. My sister had made a critical mistake. And I had proof she didn't even know existed, evidence she couldn't imagine I'd prepared. My name is Amelia, and until that phone call shattered my afternoon, I hadn't fully understood how disposable I was to my own sister, how little I mattered in her world. I'd moved back home 6 months ago after my lease ended unexpectedly when my roommate got married, saving money before relocating for a new job in another city. It was supposed to be temporary, just a brief stop. A few months of family time before starting my next chapter and building my independent life. Brooke still lived at home too, despite being 27 years old with a college degree. She worked part-time at a boutique downtown and spent money faster than she earned it on clothes and restaurants. Our parents never pushed her to leave or become fully independent. She was the favorite, the baby, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. I was the responsible one, the reliable daughter, the one expected to understand and accommodate everyone else's needs. Living together again had been awkward at first, full of old tensions, but I tried hard to make it work peacefully. Brooke had always been forgiven for everything, no matter how serious the offense or how much damage she caused. When she crashed Dad's car at 19 after staying out too late, they bought her a newer, safer one within a week. When she maxed out a credit card at 23 buying things she didn't need, they paid it off without hesitation and never mentioned it again. When she borrowed Mom's pearl earrings for a party and lost one on the dance floor, they replaced the entire pair and told me not to make a big deal about it when I pointed out the unfairness. I'd learned early that keeping the peace in our family meant swallowing my feelings and biting my tongue. It meant being the bigger person always. It meant pretending her behavior didn't hurt me deeply, that I didn't notice the favoritism. This wasn't new or surprising. This was a pattern that had defined our entire relationship since childhood, the foundation our family was built on. Brooke took what she wanted, consequences be damned, and everyone else adjusted around her needs. But stealing my grandmother's necklace wasn't a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. This was different, darker. This was calculated and deliberate. "I'll call you back," I told the buyer, ending the conversation before my voice could crack. I walked upstairs slowly, deliberately, my hand gripping the banister tightly as my heart pounded with each step. I opened my bedroom door and went straight to my dresser, my hands shaking slightly now. The small wooden jewelry box that usually sat on top was gone, vanished without a trace. I pulled open the top drawer where I sometimes kept it for extra security. I checked under folded clothes, behind books on my shelf, in every possible hiding spot I could think of in my small room. Nothing. The box had disappeared completely. She hadn't even tried to hide the theft or cover her tracks. She'd simply taken it and assumed I wouldn't notice quickly, or that I wouldn't say anything even if I did. The casual arrogance of it made my blood boil with anger I rarely let myself feel. How long had she been planning this theft? Had she gone through my things carefully while I was at work, calculating what she could take? Had she watched me, waiting for the right moment? I found Brooke in the kitchen exactly where I'd left her, pouring chocolate chips into the mixing bowl with care. "Hey, have you seen my jewelry box?" I asked as casually as I could manage, keeping my voice light and unconcerned. She didn't even pause her stirring or look up at me. "Nope. Maybe you moved it when you were cleaning last weekend." Her tone was light, completely unconcerned, almost dismissive. She smiled at me warmly while lying directly to my face without a hint of guilt. This was a test, I realized with sudden clarity. She was testing to see if I'd back down like always, if I'd doubt my own memory, if I'd let it go like I'd let go of everything else over the years of our relationship. I could see it in her eyes when she finally glanced at me, that familiar confidence that came from never facing real consequences for her actions. She thought she was completely safe. She thought I'd never figure it out, or that I'd choose peace over confrontation like I always did. She was wrong this time. I walked into the living room where Mom was reading her book club selection, curled up in her favorite chair. "Mom, have you seen my jewelry box? The wooden one Grandma gave me." Mom looked up from her novel, her expression already shifting into protective mode, a look I knew too well. "No, sweetie. Did you check your room thoroughly? Maybe the closet?" Before I could answer or explain further, Brooke appeared in the doorway behind me, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Amelia thinks someone took her jewelry," she said with a small laugh that sounded innocent to anyone who didn't know better. Mom's face tightened with familiar discomfort. "Let's not start accusing anyone of anything serious. Things get misplaced all the time. I'm sure it'll turn up eventually." Just like that, in a single moment, the sides were chosen. Not with evidence or careful investigation, but with instinct and habit. The instinct to protect Brooke from consequences and uncomfortable questions. The instinct to make me the unreasonable one for even suggesting something might be wrong. I watched this dynamic play out in real time, this familiar dance we'd all perfected over decades. I didn't argue or push back. Not yet. I simply nodded slowly and said I'd keep looking on my own. This surprised them both visibly. Brooke had expected confrontation and accusations, expected me to push back hard so she could play the wounded victim. Mom had expected drama she'd have to carefully manage and smooth over. Instead, I went back upstairs calmly, my footsteps measured and steady. I'd learned something important over the years, something they'd never understood about me or bothered to learn. Silence wasn't weakness or acceptance. Silence was strategic, a weapon they taught me to use. While they assumed my quietness meant I was backing down and letting it go, I was actually thinking 3 steps ahead, planning my next moves. I had information they didn't know I possessed. I had leverage they couldn't see coming. And most importantly, I had time on my side. Time to build my case carefully and thoroughly, while Brooke's overconfidence made her sloppy and careless. My phone buzzed with a text message from the buyer, the notification lighting up my screen. Need proof by tomorrow afternoon. Girlfriend wants documentation or I return the necklace for refund. Sorry for the pressure. 24 hours. The clock was officially ticking now. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop, my fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Years ago, when Grandma first gave me the necklace at my 16th birthday party, I'd been so overwhelmed by its value and beauty that I'd documented everything about it carefully. Not because I didn't trust my family or suspected future theft. Not because I was paranoid or controlling. But because I loved it so much, cherished it so deeply, that I wanted to preserve every detail and memory. I'd taken photographs from multiple angles in different lighting. I'd had it appraised for insurance purposes at a certified jeweler. I'd scanned the original receipt Grandma had kept in her safe. I'd even saved the email she sent me the day after she gave it to me, explaining its history and significance. I opened my cloud storage folder labeled Grandma's Jewelry, with slightly trembling hands. Everything was still there, untouched and perfectly organized. High-resolution photos showing the engraving clearly, the imperfections in the stones, the unique twisted chain pattern. The official appraisal document from a certified jeweler, dated 3 years ago, listing my full name as the owner. The insurance policy I'd purchased through my own account, clearly showing the necklace under my personal coverage with detailed descriptions. Screenshots of Grandma's email where she'd written, "This necklace has been in our family for 40 years, passed down through generations. Now it's yours, my dear Amelia. Wear it with joy and remember me always." Every piece of evidence was time-stamped with dates, verified by professionals, and completely irrefutable. I'd been ready for disaster without even knowing I was preparing for this specific betrayal. Brooke had no idea what she was up against or how thoroughly I'd protected what was mine. Downstairs, I heard Brooke on her phone, her voice carrying up the stairs through the old house's thin walls. "Yeah, I handled something important this week. Finally taking care of my own business, you know? Being independent." She laughed, that carefree sound that used to make me smile when we were younger. Now it made me physically sick. She was bragging about betraying me to someone. She was proud of herself, feeling accomplished. I listened to her confidence, her absolute certainty that she'd gotten away with something clever and smart. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her entire story would collapse around her like a house of cards. The overconfidence was almost beautiful in its stupidity and short-sightedness. She'd been so focused on getting the money quickly that she'd never considered the aftermath or consequences, never planned for questions from buyers, never thought about proof or documentation. That evening, I helped Mom make dinner like nothing was wrong, like my world hadn't shifted. I chopped vegetables for the salad while she told me about her book club meeting and the drama between members. I smiled and nodded in all the right places, making appropriate comments. Brooke set the table carefully, humming to herself, still riding high on her secret success. Dad came home from his office and kissed us all on the head like he did every evening. We ate together like a normal, happy family around the old dining table. No one mentioned the missing jewelry box again. No one asked uncomfortable questions or pushed for answers. This was our family's specialty, performing normalcy, avoiding conflict at all costs, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. But underneath the pleasant dinner conversation about Dad's work and Mom's garden, I was making calculations and plans. I was composing the email I'd send to the buyer tonight. I was planning my next careful moves. Control looked exactly like peace, but it was actually power gathering itself quietly. After dinner, Brooke pulled me aside in the hallway near the stairs, away from our parents. Her playful expression was completely gone now, replaced with something harder. "You need to drop this jewelry thing," she whispered urgently, her hand gripping my arm tightly enough to leave marks. "You're making Mom stressed and upset." There it was, the threat disguised as concern for others. The manipulation that had worked perfectly for years. "I'm just trying to find something that belongs to me," I said quietly, not pulling away. Her eyes flashed with something between fear and anger, emotions she couldn't quite hide. "Things get lost all the time. Let it go. It's not worth causing family drama over some necklace." But her voice had an edge to it now, a tremor that betrayed her growing nerves. She was scared, and fear was slipping through the cracks of her confident facade like water. She knew something I wasn't supposed to know yet. And that knowledge was eating at her, keeping her awake. That night, after everyone was asleep and the house was finally quiet, I opened my laptop and composed an email to the buyer. I attached every single document I had carefully saved. The photographs from multiple angles. The professional appraisal with the jeweler's official seal. The insurance policy with my name clearly listed. The email from my grandmother with its timestamp and her words. I wrote exactly 3 sentences in the body of the email. "This necklace belongs to me." Attached is proof of ownership. The person who sold it to you is my sister, and she had no legal right to take or sell my property. I didn't explain why she'd done it or provide background. I didn't apologize for the situation or make excuses. I didn't add emotion or dramatic commentary. The facts spoke for themselves clearly and powerfully. Truth didn't need decoration or embellishment. I hit send at 1:47 a.m. and closed my laptop. Then I went to bed and slept soundly for the first time in days. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Brooke's footsteps pacing anxiously in her room next door. Back and forth, the floorboards creaking with each pass. I checked my phone immediately. The buyer had responded at 7:30 a.m. "Received your documents. Everything checks out. Contacting seller now for explanation. Thank you for the proof." I got dressed slowly, taking my time, listening to Brooke's movements becoming more frantic and desperate. Her phone rang multiple times in quick succession. She answered in hushed, desperate tones that carried through the wall. I heard fragments through the thin barrier between our rooms. "I can explain. There was a misunderstanding. Just give me some time." I made my bed carefully, organized my desk, and went downstairs for breakfast like it was any normal Sunday morning. Brooke stayed in her room, door closed. She knew it was coming now. She knew the walls were closing in around her. And she knew she had no way out. The house phone rang at 9:15 a.m., cutting through the quiet morning. Mom answered in the kitchen, her voice cheerful at first. "Hello. Yes, this is she." Her voice went from cheerful to confused to serious within seconds. "Yes, this is her mother. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake here." Long pause while she listened. "He has what proof exactly?" Another pause, even longer this time, her face changing. "I see. No, I wasn't aware of any of this. Can you hold, please?" Mom's face had gone pale, almost gray. She covered the receiver with her hand and called out, "Roger, can you come here right now?" Dad emerged from his home office looking annoyed at the interruption to his morning routine. Mom handed him the phone without explanation, her hand shaking slightly. I poured myself coffee slowly and sat at the kitchen table, watching their expressions change as they heard it all from a stranger's voice. Sometimes the truth lands harder when it comes from outside the family. Dad listened for 3 full minutes without interrupting once, his expression growing darker. His jaw tightened progressively. His free hand clenched into a fist at his side. "I understand completely. We'll handle this immediately. Thank you for calling us directly." He hung up carefully and looked at Mom, who was gripping the counter. That was a man who bought a sapphire necklace from Brooke 3 days ago at a coffee shop. He says Amelia sent him proof that the necklace was stolen property from her. Mom's hand went to her mouth in shock. That can't be right. Brooke wouldn't. But her voice lacked conviction now, trailing off. Dad walked to the stairs with heavy steps. Brooke, come down here. Now. The footsteps overhead stopped abruptly. Silence stretched for 10 long seconds that felt like hours. Then slow, reluctant footsteps descended the stairs. Brooke appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy from crying. Daddy, I can explain. Show me your proof of ownership, Dad interrupted coldly, his voice hard. She had none. Brooke collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face dramatically. It's just jewelry. Why is everyone making such a huge deal about this? Her voice rose to that familiar pitch that usually made our parents soften and comfort her. Amelia has so much stuff. She wouldn't even miss one necklace. I needed money desperately, and she wasn't even wearing it. Mom reached for her hand automatically. Brooke, sweetie, you can't just take other people's things without permission. But she's my sister. Brooke wailed loudly. Family shares everything. And she's always been so selfish with her stuff, never letting me borrow anything. I watched this performance with detached clarity, seeing it for what it truly was. The crying, the justification, the desperate attempt to paint herself as the victim. It had worked countless times before, every single time. But Dad's face remained hard as stone. And Mom, for the first time I could remember in my entire life, looked uncertain about defending her. I set down my coffee cup carefully. The sound drew everyone's attention to me. That wasn't jewelry, I said quietly, my voice steady. Every head turned toward me sharply. That was Grandma's. She gave it to me specifically when I turned 16. She wrote me an email about how it had been in our family for 40 years and now it was mine to keep. You took something that had nothing to do with you and sold it like it was meaningless. My voice didn't shake or waver. I didn't yell or raise my tone. I simply stated facts clearly. That necklace meant everything to me, and you knew that perfectly well. You just didn't care about my feelings. The room was completely silent, almost eerily so. No one interrupted my words. No one rushed to change the subject or smooth things over quickly. For the first time in my entire life, I'd said the truth out loud, and no one could dismiss it or make excuses. You need to refund that man immediately, Dad said to Brooke, his voice final. But I already spent the money on, she started desperately. I don't care how you do it, he cut her off sharply. Borrow it from someone. Use your credit card. Sell something of your own. But you will refund him today, and you will get that necklace back to Amelia. Brooke's face crumpled in disbelief. $5,000 was money she didn't have, money she couldn't easily replace without major sacrifices. The designer clothes she'd been buying regularly, the expensive dinners at trendy restaurants, the concert tickets she'd purchased. Suddenly the cost of her entitlement was coming due. This isn't fair to me, she whispered, looking around for support. But even she seemed to know how hollow that sounded now. How ridiculous. Entitlement always had a price eventually. She just never had to pay it before. Mom looked away, tears in her own eyes now. 3 days later, Brooke handed me a small velvet pouch without speaking. Inside was my grandmother's necklace, exactly as I remembered it. She didn't apologize or meet my eyes. She didn't acknowledge what she'd done. She simply left it on my dresser and walked away quickly. I held the necklace up to the light, checking every single detail carefully. It was unharmed, exactly as I remembered. The sapphires still sparkled. The engraving was intact. I should have felt victorious and satisfied. I should have felt happy that justice had been served. But as I fastened the clasp and felt the familiar weight against my collarbone, I realized something important. Getting the necklace back wasn't the real win. The real win was that I'd finally stopped protecting someone who had never protected me. I'd stopped making myself smaller to keep the peace. I'd stopped accepting crumbs of respect from people who should have given me loyalty. 2 weeks later, I moved out of my parents' house for good. I found a small apartment across town and signed a 6-month lease, taking that first step toward independence. I didn't make big announcements or dramatic declarations. I didn't give speeches about boundaries or fresh starts. I simply packed my things carefully, thanked my parents for letting me stay, and left. Brooke watched from her bedroom window as I loaded my car with boxes. She didn't come down to say goodbye or wish me well. Mom cried and asked if I was upset with them, if I was leaving because of what happened. I'm not upset, I told her honestly. I'm just ready to be on my own again. Dad hugged me tight and slipped $200 into my hand. For groceries, he said gruffly. They weren't bad people. They just enabled bad behavior for so long they couldn't see it anymore. Walking away wasn't about punishing them. It was about choosing myself. Weeks later, I wore the necklace to dinner with colleagues from my new job. We celebrated a successful project at a restaurant I'd chosen, a meal I'd paid for with money I'd earned through hard work. The sapphires caught the light as I laughed at someone's joke, feeling free and happy. My phone sat silent in my purse. No messages from Brooke asking for favors, no guilt trips about family obligations, no demands for my time or things or energy. The necklace had come back to me, but something more important had changed forever. I'd learned that family didn't mean unlimited access to my life, my possessions, or my peace. I'd learned that love without respect was just a word. And I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop participating in your own diminishment. That knowledge changed everything. Family doesn't mean access, and knowing that changed my life.